Even with that being said, in a recent poll done by Critical Insights in the fall of 2007, it shows that in all of Maine, Susan Collins has 52% to your 33%. And even in your congressional district, she has 49% to your 36%. What are your thoughts and feelings towards that?
The polls don't matter at all.
At all?
A year before. Not at all. I mean, you may remember, you might not remember, given your age, but George Mitchell was 36 points down when he was first appointed to the Senate. I mean, he was 36 points behind David Emory. And Chuck Schumer, who is now the head of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, senator from New York, he was down 20 points in June of the year he was elected. Debbie Stabenow from Michigan, Jim Webb from Virginia, Sheldon Whitehouse from New Jersey, they were all down. These polls don't matter because, as I said, Susan Collins has had terrific press. But as people come to understand her record and mine over the last 11 years, and we're not making this up. I mean, the record is there. How she voted, how I voted. Once people have a chance to compare that record, this race will get a lot tighter.
Hypothetically, if you win the election, okay, do you think that losing Senator Collins' seniority in Washington will be a significant loss to Maine people?
No, not at all. Not at all. Because, first of all, it is very clear we're going to have a Democratic Senate. I mean, all of the bets about what will happen in '08, it's pretty clear. Even the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, knows he's going to lose seats. There's one Democratic senator who is at some risk of losing her seat, and 7 Republican seats that are at risk. And we're going to gain seats. It is more important to be in the majority in terms of being able to do things for your home state than to have been there for, frankly, 2 terms. I mean, so I don't think I'm going to be able to do more for Maine because the majority in the Senate is going to be a Democratic majority. If we have a Democratic president, we need at least 1 Democratic senator from Maine. But, you know, that's not as important as what we do there. You know, getting into the United States Senate and being perceived to have influence is not what this is about. This is a question of what you fight for, whose side you're on, and what you're trying to accomplish. And the bottom line is that people in Maine need an advocate for the middle class. Small business community needs an advocate for them instead of for big multinational corporations. Big business has had its way in Washington for the last 6 or 7 years, and we need to change that whole focus.
Along those lines, let's talk about specific issues.
Sure.
Let's start with one of the biggest, the Iraq War. Congressman Allen, what was your rationale for voting against the Iraq War when so many other politicians voted for it, including your opponent, Senator Susan Collins?
Right. I didn't believe what the president was saying, and I had good reason for not. But there was plenty of evidence out there. Hans Blix was inspecting for chemical and biological weapons, and he couldn't find any. He was running the UN program. If the administration knew where chemical and biological weapons were located, I figured they'd probably tell the UN inspector who's out there trying to find them. The same thing on the nuclear side. There was the UN inspector looking at trying to find the elements of the nuclear program, couldn't find any, and the administration couldn't give him any help. So my view was that the administration was overstating the case for war, that they simply were manipulating information. I didn't believe them. I also thought that if you put 150,000 troops into Iraq, which is a country the size of California with 25 million people in the middle of the Arab Islamic world, how on earth are we going to be able to control that? And I remember some of my friends and I, when people like Donald Rumsfeld said we'd be welcomed as liberators, we were trying to think of a historical parallel, and we couldn't. You don't invade countries of such a different ethnic and religious background and expect they're going to be happy when you overthrow their government. And some people were happy, but it didn't last very long because the administration couldn't manage the occupation and the reconstruction effectively, and the Congress did no oversight, didn't help, didn't hold the administration to account.
Now, you've stated that you want to pull our troops out of Iraq. What is your strategy in doing so?
Well, again, I come back to George Mitchell and what he did in Northern Ireland. He basically said, look, to all the parties, I'm leaving on Good Friday. So we have, and I forget how much time it was, but unless you come together and compromise your differences, I'm gone, and this peace process is over. And that forced people on both sides to make compromises that they really didn't want to make, but they were more afraid of failing entirely. George Mitchell learned that in the United States Senate. He learned the importance of setting deadlines. Susan says to the public sometimes, well, she's not for a precipitous withdrawal. Well, nobody's for a precipitous withdrawal because it probably takes at least a year to pull our troops out. So if we set a deadline a year out, that is a strategy that makes sense militarily, it makes sense politically, in terms of forcing the Sunni and the Shia to compromise their differences. It gives the surrounding countries time to figure out what they're going to do, because neither Saudi Arabia nor Syria nor Iran wants to have Iraq in chaos. And we want them to feel that they've got responsibility for working together. And I mean, the bottom line is we spend $10 billion there a month. Not to mention, the loss of life is the worst. The loss of those kids I've seen at Walter Reed who have lost a limb or who have been damaged in ways that they'll never completely recover from. That's the worst thing. But $10 billion a month that could be used here to help our country grow and develop is simply something we can't keep doing. The Army is breaking up. It's getting weaker. People are leaving our Army. So we need a change, and that's why I think this policy I'm suggesting makes the most sense.
How would you respond to Republican critics that say pulling out too early will cause the region to collapse and fall to the terrorists?
First of all, nobody's suggesting pulling out too early. That's another way to say precipitous withdrawal. We're not doing that. When I was over there in August, you can't believe we've created whole towns over there. You have buildings and equipment, billions and billions of dollars of that, and 150,000 American troops roughly, and you have probably another 160,000 people employed by American contractors. You can't just pick up and leave, because partly you have to ship stuff out. You can't fly it out. So it takes a year. So we're not going to leave in any way that will undermine the safety of our troops. Secondly, I would say the people who say if we leave, let's say in a year, there will be chaos there, are the same people who said it's going to be a walk in the park, we're going to be greeted with flowers, they'll welcome us as liberators. They don't have credibility to predict the future. The future, I believe that what happens as we withdraw is not known and it's not fixed. And if we have the right diplomatic efforts, if we can re-engage the other countries in the community, if we can get more support, a lot of our allies were alienated by the invasion and the arrogance of the Bush administration. We can get them back on our side. This whole process can go more smoothly.
By setting deadlines, though, would that not give a good reason for the terrorists just to hold out until we leave?
Who are the terrorists?
The people that are in Iraq right now. There is a lot of speculation in regards to that.
I know, but what people do when they make that argument is they are confusing the Shia and the Sunni militias who are fighting each other. They're not coming over here. Al-Qaeda in Iraq is a problem. There are a few. They're responsible for about 5% of the violence, but they are a problem because they really want to get us. But what's happened in Iraq now is in the western part, west of Baghdad, and to some extent north of Baghdad, the Sunni sheikhs, the chiefs, have basically turned against al-Qaeda in Iraq. Al-Qaeda in Iraq is weaker than it used to be. We need a force in the region somewhere to deal with those terrorists. But it simply isn't true that if we left, most of the people who are fighting in Iraq are coming our way. They're not. This is a religious civil war, primarily a religious civil war. And the notion that we can stay there month after month, year after year, spending $10 billion a month to provide a police force in a country in the middle of the Arab Islamic world where you've got this conflict going on between the Sunni and the Shia, which goes back 1,300 years. I just don't believe that makes sense for us, and I don't think it's good for us, and I certainly don't think that having an outside police force is good for the Iraqis.